One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "The Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." It's hard for us to grasp the enormity of the shock to the Pharisees when Jesus said the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. The use of the word even indicates that Jesus realized what a big deal it was. And we don't grasp it because perhaps we don't grasp how central the theology of the Sabbath is to the Old Testament. It dates way before the Ten Commandments and the books of Moses. It goes right back to the first book in the Bible, the description of the creation. God takes a Sabbath. The Sabbath is integral to the nature of God. And then we do come to the Ten Commandments, and more space is given to the commandment about the Sabbath than to any of the others. And then on into the prophets, where the prophets castigate the people again and again for failing to keep the Sabbath, and they put it alongside egregious sins like idolatry and adultery. And back in Genesis chapter 1, we are told that we are made in the image of God. In other words, Sabbath is integral to our nature. So when people rush around 7 days a week making no space for God, they are acting counter to their DNA. Now, Sabbath is much more than just going to church on a Sunday, although I think that's included. Sabbath is the habit of making time and space for God at the center of our being. And that produces that place where the psalmist says, "In quietness and confidence is your strength." If we'd only keep the Sabbath, an awful lot of psychosomatic illnesses would disappear. But Jesus is saying more than that here. He is saying he is Lord of the Sabbath. He doesn't need to keep the Sabbath. Now follow the logic here. Moses said 6 days you can labor, but the seventh day is holy to the Lord. What Moses is saying is, I want you to give a seventh of your time to God and a tenth of your money to God. But Jesus is saying, I don't need to give a seventh of my time to God because I am God. He said the same to Peter when Peter was panicking about have we paid the temple tax. He said, in effect, I don't need to pay the temple tax because I would be paying tax to myself. It was a claim to be God. The Queen of England doesn't sing God Save the Queen because she is the Queen. And she certainly doesn't say long to reign over us. That would be absurd. And so Jesus does not need to keep the Sabbath or pay a tithe. Evidence number 5 of the divinity of Jesus, his authority over the Sabbath. Now to look for evidence number 6, we jump across to Mark chapter 4, the boat in a storm. Now heavy winds can come up excessively powerfully and very fast in the Dead Sea Valley. Look what happened to Angus Buchan when he held a rally down at Engedi in the Dead Sea. The screen was torn, everything was blown off the stage. You don't want to be caught in a boat in that weather. And they were. A furious squall came up and the boat was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Don't you care that we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind and the waves. "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. And they were terrified and asked, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Notice that Jesus is asleep on a cushion in the stern. How did he manage that in the midst of a life-threatening situation? Well, that's because he has that Sabbath place within him, space for God, space for peace and calm. And then in a moment he's going to get up and he's going to spread that calm over the wind and the waves. In this case, Jesus doesn't make any verbal claim. He leaves that to the disciples, and they say, "Who is this that even the winds and the waves obey him?" A very good question. Who indeed is this? Evidence number 6 of the divinity of Jesus, his authority over nature. And all nature, not just a squall on a little lake in a little country called Israel. He is supreme over all forces of nature in the world and beyond. Now there are people who say if Jesus is supreme over the power of nature, why doesn't he stop the earthquakes and fires and volcanoes that cause so much suffering? And that's a very complicated question. It's allied to the classic question, why do innocent people suffer? I can't answer that now, but if you go to my website, to Big Questions, you will find an attempt to answer that question. But the point here is that Jesus is more powerful than every force of nature you can think of. He's more powerful than volcanoes. We are told that the eruption of Krakatoa was heard 3,000 miles away, that it spewed ash 260,000 feet into the air. That's 9 times higher than Mount Everest. Jesus is more powerful than an earthquake, strong enough to create a tsunami which was able to breach an anti-tsunami wall as if it were a children's toy. He's more powerful than the greatest tornado ever recorded, which was 2 miles wide, traveled 219 miles at a speed of 73 miles an hour and creating winds of over 200 miles an hour. And Jesus is able to turn the worst winds and waves in our lives into an ocean of calm.